and welcome to Community Pulse, a CAN TV program featuring local leaders and organizations focused on improving health and well-being in the city of Chicago. Community Pulse is presented by the Foxglove Alliance, a public health coalition supported by the Hectone Institute of Medicine in partnership with the Healthcare Council of Chicago, managed by Third Horizon, and Hectone's Nurses and the Humanities. My name is Meghan Phillipp, and I serve as Executive Director of the Healthcare Council of Chicago, and I am one of Community Pulse's, one of their rotating hosts. In today's episode, I am honored to welcome the founder and executive director of the Chicago Recovering Communities Coalition as they celebrate and recognize Recovery Month. Recovery Month is observed nationally every September, raising awareness about how substance abuse treatment and mental health services empower individuals with mental and/or substance use disorders to help to lead healthier and more fulfilling lives. Welcome, Dora.
Thank you. Glad
it's such a pleasure. She is the person to talk about on this issue. So before we dive into your role and the tremendous community leadership you have here in Chicago, I would love for us to also just recognize your personal journey. You are someone that is in long-term recovery. I believe what I read is over 36 years. So how has the landscape of recovery changed since you first started your journey?
Yes, I'm a woman in long-term recovery. I just celebrated 37 years on this month in September. And the landscape has changed since I've came in, Megan, because there's multiple pathways. When I came into the recovery landscape, it was only AACA, NA. Those were primarily the programs or self-help models that you could attend. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's very different now where we have multiple pathways and people get to choose what they want. And if it's not a 12-step model, it can be a holistic model. It can be medicated assisted recovery. It can be a number of different things that they can choose from.
That's great. So as the evolution of all of this, what motivated you to found the Chicago Recovering Communities Coalition, and how has the organization evolved?
What motivated me was the neighborhood and the community that I lived in. Services were not available. I didn't receive treatment, so I had to go back to my community where I lived, and I had to find services for myself and my children as a single mother. It prompted me to leave the community that I lived in and move to Edgewater Rogers Park, where services were more abundant, readily available for women and children. And then once I found the services and we began to heal as a family, then I decided, okay, it's time for me to go back to my community where I came from and institute some of the same services that I had found but were not in my community where I had to leave from. So that was a real important part. If I couldn't find the services, I know others can't find the services.
That's great. And your organization has really been a pioneer of spreading that wealth and really making sure that there's more accessibility to these services. So I would love to just unpack some of the challenges. You know, the geographic challenge of accessibility is what you were trying to solve for. What other sorts of challenges are there in managing and evolving the model to meet the needs of community?
One of the things that the community, the community in which we live in needed was a face for recovery. Addiction is prevalent in the community where we live. How do we put a face on recovery? How do we fight stigma and let people know that there's services available, not just for the person experiencing substance use disorder, but the entire family? And that's what recovery is all about. Recovery is about healing the entire family, not just the individual suffering with it. Some of the challenges that still exist in our community is it appears that the community is just comfortable with addiction and the way violence and the way that it is, lack of health care, the disparities with Black and brown individuals. And we need to make people aware that services are available and they're right in your community. And you can get them and they're for free. You don't have to do anything but just make a phone call. Come into the center. Talk about whether you need food, whether you need clothing. I need to figure out a place to get services for my children. Where do I get that? And if we can't provide it at the community center, we will direct you to where you can get it.
Yeah. You are a strong advocate for recovery, but especially in Black communities. So how do you think these recovery support services really address the racial and cultural disparities that are attached to accessible treatment?
Well, it needs to be more of them. One of our main taglines is recovery support services beyond the treatment door. Treatment works. We know treatment works, but it's time limited. What do people do? Where do they go once they complete treatment and they need more help? They need more assistance. Their family need assistance. They need more education. They need to learn about whatever modality of recovery that they're choosing to be in. And that's where CRCC comes in at. Recovery Support Services Beyond the Treatment Door.
You've also been really transformative in the residency. So a lot of what you just described are some of the determinants, food, other education, jobs, but where someone lives is also just as critical. So what has been your vision for recovery housing in Illinois and beyond as well?
Recovery housing, I will say this, it's not enough of it. It's not, especially for women with children, but it's hard to recover when you don't have a safe place to live. It's hard to recover when you don't have the things you need to survive: food, shelter, transportation, childcare, jobs. Once I begin to recover, the very same things that we offer at CRCC are the very same things I sought for in my own personal journey in recovery with my children. I needed childcare. I needed transportation. I needed to figure out where was I going to work. I needed to figure out what aftercare programs I could put my children in. I needed to figure out where could I go and get education and not be bound by the traditions of the self-help programs. There were some places that I could go to and some places I could not go to with my children. And as a single mother, it was really, really important for me to include my children in my recovery. And housing was a very, very stable part of how to do that. Recovery housing in Illinois, as you know, it's not enough of it. I think we have over 4,000 beds funded by our state, but it's not enough. There's so many people that are still in need of recovery residences, and my work with recovery residents began with the Illinois Association of Extended Care, and I'm the past president, but it's still training and development needed in our state so that we can have healthy, safe environments for people to thrive in and to recover in.
You do sit on many boards, as you just alluded to, and are incredibly well-versed across many community organizations and such an advocate. So how do you balance your sort of leadership both in managing the coalition as well as where it extends? And how do you look at those partnerships and those opportunities to connect the dots of accessibility?
Accessibility is real important. And being able to share the wealth, to share my knowledge that I've gained. Coming into recovery, I wasn't a leader. I was developed into a leader. I believe that people need to be developed. I believe that once we learn how to help, we need to pass it on to other community leaders. And we always need to look for the next set of leaders in our community. And in coalition building, bringing people together, sharing the knowledge, sharing the wealth, including them in the continuum and saying, we need this. One of my mentors told me this a while back. He said, one of the things about being a leader is people are going to take pot shots at you. He said, but as long as you're trying to help the community, you'll be fine. Keep up the good work.
I feel like that community thread is your heart and soul. And I wonder also, just even in working with other organizations, how do you all start to measure where there are these gaps. We know that there's a lack of beds. We know that there are some challenges financially, both for the state and for all of us that are primarily philanthropically funded to make these programs work. How do you see a future of sustainability, and what are the types of things from an advocacy or development lens that you are looking to, whether it's within your coalition or some of the other providers out there that support these services as well?
Number one is we need to collaborate together. There is not a shortage of people. There is a shortage of services. I believe that we have to look for different sources of funding, just as the coalition has done. I believe that we have to advocate for people who cannot advocate for themselves. Before I became an advocate, there was someone advocating for me, someone advocating for my children and other people who suffered from this horrible disorder. Recovery is possible, but there is no book. If you don't know how to access a 12-step program, you don't know that, which it wasn't readily available and readily seen. If you don't know how to access funding or where to go for funding, you will be like me. I never got treatment because I didn't have insurance. So I had to go to the 12-step groups. I had to look for services that could help me and my family become stable. And be in a community where the services are hidden, maybe we can put flags. I don't know. But what we need to do is we need to come together. And coming together will make us stronger so that we can advocate for the people who are less fortunate and who don't know how to advocate for themselves.
Yeah. And one of the things that you alluded to is just even for yourself, when you first were starting your journey, the stigma is still there. I think that the improvements and the awareness building around just mental health in general has definitely dramatically increased. As we look at, addiction and recovery across the U.S. even, we know that we still see high numbers of people dying every day from things that aren't going untreated. So what messaging can we have for our peers, our families, for those that we can identify and see it happening? How do we continue to break stigma and show people that there are pathways to wonderful organizations like you that break stigma?
This is a start what we're doing. We have to talk about it. We have to be loud about it. I worked as a licensed counselor in the state of Illinois for 25 years, and we were prohibited from even talking about our own personal journey or even sharing that we were in recovery. At some agencies that I worked for, they even said, if you're in a 12-step meeting and your participants or your clients come in, you should get up and leave. So it was prohibited. One of the reasons why I wanted to be on the other side is because I wanted people to know that recovery is possible and that relapse is not a part of recovery. Relapse is a separate event and it's preventable. And I think one of the things that we need to continue to do is to be a voice. We have to be a voice for the less fortunate. We have to tell our story. We have to share it with other people so that they can heal and they can get better and they can know that there's hope for them too.
Yeah, and I think that there's going to be a big storytelling coming up this weekend. You are organizing with the Northern Illinois Recovery Community Organization, Faces and Voices of Recovery, and joined together on Saturday, September 21st at UIC for a national rally. This is the first of its kind. If you see this after the fact, there's still more to do. But I want to talk about why now, why this rally, what does it mean coming together like this? I mean, you kind of already alluded to it, that we need to raise the visibility in the story, but love to hear about what the activities are going to look like and what this means during this month.
Yes, there is going to be a spotlight on the state of Illinois and the services and what we provide. It will be a family-friendly environment. There's going to be resource tables. There's going to be vendors. There's going to be food. There's going to be games. There's going to be things for the children to do. There's going to be breakout session, and there's going to be national speakers. And above all, we have invited our director of substance use and recovery to be the opening speaker to come out and put a spotlight on all the work that we're doing in Illinois. I've worked in this state for a number of years, and it's really, really important to put a face and a voice on recovery. And that's what we want to do. We just want to invite everybody to come out, feel the arena, get information, and participate. We're going to have some entertainment. We're going to have Chance the Rapper and Common. They're going to make a showing. We're going to have federal speakers from the SAMHSA level. You guys are going to be there.
Yes, it's true.
Bring your kids, bring your family, and we're just going to have a good time. We're going to spend the day. For those people who are coming in out of state on Friday, we're going to have a pre-rally event on Friday. It's going to be an all-recovery meeting. It's going to be speakers. It's going to be open mic, free food, celebration, and come out and celebrate with us. Enjoy the weekend. So it's a lot to do. And it's Recovery Month, and we want to put a face and a voice on recovery.
I think that's great. As we move past the rally and other opportunities for both our viewers, whether they are experiencing their own challenges or have people in their lives, or they want to support these efforts knowing that it affects our communities, what types of advice do you give to folks and stakeholders to join these efforts, to advocate, to volunteer? How can they support the Chicago Recovering Communities Coalition as well as broader efforts?
Get involved. Get involved. Volunteer. Call our number, 773-417-2045. We need all type of help. We offer all type of help and assistance to anybody who needs it. And if we don't have it at the coalition, we will definitely direct you to where you can get the help from. It's really important that we not stay in our corner. Come out of the corner, be a voice, be a face, and talk about it. Because it is something that is alive and real. In the communities I live in, when I drive through, I can always tell the communities that are impacted way more than others. So come out of your corner.
Yeah. As we look at, stepping outside of Chicago and the very neighborhood focus, how do you also think about some of the broader implications for Illinois? We on the way in here, we were talking about the advancement of new models for behavioral health. How do you think these things will bolster the intersectionality of healthcare as well as recovery and mental health? And how can we continue to narrate these conversations that it's not a one size fits all, but to your point, there's lots of different programming, and how do we continue to, as stakeholders, wrap our arms around what is needed for individuals, and how do we continue to innovate and not just get stuck in the old way of doing things?
One of the things that we do at CRCC is we do community needs assessment. We get the stakeholders involved, we get the businesses involved, and we find out what people want. We know that there's gaps in services, but I think in the upcoming years with the merger of DHS and substance abuse, we're going to see a change in our communities. We're going to see more accessibility, and we want to continue the work that we're doing. This work is really, really important. I never thought that I would be doing this work, but my recovery has grown, and I've developed in areas like advocacy and nonprofit business, and I've developed to see that what I needed in my recovery, the next person may not have needed. But that's not to say that I can't direct them to where it's needed. More services are needed in the community where people are affected. Mental illness and substance abuse is now two of the biggest issues. Violence come in third, but those issues are two of the biggest issues that affect most communities throughout this world.
And what are the things that, outside of Chicago Recovering Communities Coalition, that you think providers or stakeholders can do to recognize that those impact why people pick up the baton to fall into substance abuse? How do we look at it from the prevention side, and what area can we be focused on as well as we look at the next generations of people? Because you mentioned you have kids and you have a family, by teaching by example because of the challenges that you went through, what is the kind of level of how we teach who comes next?
Prevention. prevention, education, ongoing education. We need to create a dialogue like I do with my grandchildren, my grandsons, and we talk about the issues in the community, the peer pressure, how they get involved with marijuana, how it's socially acceptable, and how you can remain healthy even though these are things that you normally see in the community. It's not normal for you to see addiction in a community that is deprived, that we're not equal in. We need to show them and we need to talk about it and keep the dialogue going.
How are you also thinking about, peer-to-peer? I think what you explained is just there are some limitations, I think, with how we have traditionally allowed people to be in recovery and to support those that can learn from that. And how have we broken down, whether it's regulatory or otherwise, to continue to support more of that peer-to-peer lens and the learning from each other?
There's more work that needs to be done. There is still a stigma that exists as a clinician and as a peer in recovery. I can walk into a room and I can not share that I'm in recovery, but that I'm a licensed clinician. And the welcome is different from when I openly share that I'm a woman in long-term recovery. So there's more work that needs to be done, and we need to continue. We need to continue to talk about this epidemic, this addiction, this trouble that we're continuing to have. And then I think it's way much better than it was 10 years ago. So I'm hopeful that we're getting better as we do this. And each time that we do this, we're reaching the masses of people, the people that don't necessarily understand that substance use disorder is a disease and it's treatable. So we have to keep doing this work. It's real important work.
Yeah. Anything else you want to share as far as how people can, I think you already shared a phone number and other ways, but any other instructions for following on social media, website, other ways that people can engage with the Chicago Recovering Communities Coalition?
Get involved. Share your story. Call another RCO. I think we may have 20 RCOs in our state now. CRCC is just the first RCO in our state. But it's real important to speak out, get involved, put a face on recovery. People need to see this. And it works. Recovery is possible for everyone. So, and everyone is affected by these problems. Mm-hmm. Everyone is affected.
Yeah.
So
when it hits one of us, it hits all of us in our community.
Absolutely.
So I am so appreciative of all the work that you've done for the many, many years and the many, many years to come. This is just one milestone in the year that we can celebrate and honor and recognize this critical issue that affects so many of us around us. So I thank you and your team, as well as the other recovery organizations across Illinois, for all that you're doing to actually influence and change the system of care for those that need those support services. So that's just about all the time we have for today. I want to thank you for sharing your personal story, as well as the amazing work of the Chicago Recovering Communities Coalition. I want to thank CAN-TV's nonprofit services team for their support in the production of this. My name is Meghan Phillipp. Thank you for watching Community Pulse, which airs on Channel 21 CAN-TV Nonprofit Services and is streaming on cantv.org. Stay well, Chicago. We will see you next time.